And sorry for the delay. It is 9 o'clock, but we're going to give board member Cobos a couple minutes to try to get online.
Shelley, we have new board counsel. His name is Joseph Chen. He's in the attendee list. Could you promote him to a panelist, please?
Definitely will. Good morning, Joseph. If we could do a mic check, please. And if you're going to use your camera, we can check that as well.
Yeah, hi, good morning. This is Joseph Chen.
Good morning. Thank you. Perfect. Good.
I think what we'll end up doing is starting this meeting at 9:05, and hopefully board member Cobos can get on at that time. So, good morning. The time is now 9:05. I call this meeting to order, the August 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Enforcement Committee of the Contractor State License Board. My name is Michael Mark, and I'm the Enforcement Committee Chair. Right now, the only committee member that looks like we're missing is Board Member Cobos, while he's having some technical difficulties. Please note that only board members who are members of the Enforcement Committee may participate in this committee meeting. Other board members who are in attendance may observe but cannot ask questions or participate in any of the discussion. Committee members, to mitigate any potential bandwidth issues, we ask that you turn off your video camera. When you would like to comment at any time during the meeting, please use the raise your hand icon. I will call on the committee members to speak, and when called upon, please unmute yourself, and when finished, return to mute. You will also need to click the raise your hand to lower your hand when you're done speaking. Mariah, are you online? Can you please call roll and confirm we have a quorum?
Michael Mark,
Here.
Rodney Cobos, absent. Susan Granzella,
Here.
Alan Guy,
Here.
Jacob Lopez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. So if Shelley, if you can please give us a flag, we're gonna all stand. And at this time, I ask you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So at this time, we have a new board member, Jacob Lopez. He was appointed to the board last month and assigned to the Enforcement Committee by Chair Mary Tykert. Jacob is a public member appointed by the Senate, and it is my understanding he is employed by the Southern California Carpenters. Board Member Lopez, would you like to say a couple words of an introduction?
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to be part of this board, and look forward to working with each one of you in whatever the assignment is at task. I am currently, employed by the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters, representing a little over 60,000 members. I reside in the Los Angeles area, and I am a regional manager for SoCal and an executive board with the Regional Council. And I'm a union carpenter. Thank you.
All right, welcome to the Enforcement Committee, Jacob. So some of the staff that are participating in today's meeting include Board Counsel John Cummings, and I believe there's a new counsel that I heard, Joseph Chen, Enforcement Chief Steve Grove, our Registrar David Folk, Chief Deputy Registrar Michael Jaminski, and Analyst Mariah Rivera. So moving on to agenda item B, public comments for items not on the agenda and future agenda item requests. This item is provided to provide public comment for items not on the agenda. To allow this committee enough time to conduct its full schedule of business, I will be allowing 3 minutes of public comments apiece. Please note that the state law prohibits committee members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment. We are not allowed to act on any item not on the agenda. If you want the community to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that issue on the agenda for a future meeting. If you have an application, a complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the board, we ask that you did not discuss any of the details of your case or pending complaint. Committee members are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in the case. If your comments are related to a specific agenda item, you can make your comments now, but you may want to wait until that item comes up for discussion. We will ask for public comment before acting on any item. Ms. Jones is our host and moderator today. She will be assisting us by monitoring public comment. Members of the public, when you would like to comment at any time during the meeting, please select the raise your hand icon in the WebEx application or leave a message in the chat feature. At this time, Shelley, is there any public comment?
We do have a couple, and just as a quick matter of housekeeping as we go into this, Mr. Member Cobos is connected. I do see he has an audio connection, but for some reason WebEx is not allowing me to promote him for a panelist. So I'm going to allow him to unmute his microphone from the attendee list, and we can just leave that open for him. Our first comment's going to come from Cesar Lopez.
Before we move on, Shelley.
Yes.
Board Member Cobos, can you unmute your microphone and signify that you are here and present?
I am present. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the first comment came from Cesar Lopez, who has left the meeting, but his comment that he dropped in says that someone needs to help us out. We just can't compete with unlicensed business. It's completely brutal without any end. Our next comment is going to come from Debbie Rodriguez, and I've unmuted your microphone.
Debbie?
Unmute button. Are you with me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah, my name is Stavi Rodriguez. I've been before this board before. My comment basically is about, I made 5 complaints to the board about unlicensed contractors and the municipality of Sacramento giving contracts to them. And the board, I guess, did act on one of them. I'm not sure how the priority thing works and why the other 4 didn't, but more to the point, since then I've discovered many municipalities across the state are doing the same thing. And mostly it is revolving around artists and works that they're paying them to display, whether a lot of them are for painting murals on buildings and, sides of roads and things like that. Some of these contracts are quite extensive in the amount of money that they're doing. And the municipalities don't seem to believe that they're beholden to the state contractor's license law. But in addition, the artists themselves are the ones that need an outreach by this board. And I would ask that an agenda item be put on a future meeting to discuss how to do that, because murals are exploding across the state. It's become very popular. And with municipalities lending credence to the fact that they don't need to be licensed, there needs to be a balancing factor. And this board, I believe, needs an outreach effort somehow to reassure them that they are, in fact, painters and decorators under the state license law. I've spoken to many of them, and really they don't believe they qualify either. They seem to think they're above that. I don't see much of a difference, between a guy who paints walls and a guy who paints murals on walls. But they seem to believe that. So the only difference that I can see between the two is the attitude. But it's not just paint, murals, but sculptures and all sorts of things. So both of those things, I believe, should be addressed by this board post haste, because the longer that it's ignored, the larger that scope is going to be when the time comes to do it. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And Davi, if I could ask you to lower your hand now that you've spoken. And with that, that's our last request for comment for now.
Okay, thank you. And Debbie, someone, if you put your information in chats, someone from staff will be able to reach out to you. Thank you. So moving on. Committee members, are there any items that you would like to be placed on any future agendas? Shelley, I'm having issues of seeing if hands are being raised, so please interrupt me if so, but I don't see any.
I don't see any either.
Okay, great. So moving on to agenda item C, and just to make sure, before going forward, are there any members of the public who would wish to address the committee on a future agenda item other than what Debbie stated? I don't see any. So moving on to item C of our agenda, the enforcement program update and staff vacancy update. This item begins on page 7 with an update on staff vacancies with the enforcement division. The table at the top of that page shows the number of vacant positions by classifications within the division as of July 21st. This table lists 37 vacant positions with the enforcement division. Fortunately, we discovered after the print that the 37 vacancies, including staff out on extended leave, so the actual number of enforcement vacancies is 25. I'm pleased to report that enforcement management has moved quickly to fill vacant positions. Division managers report that the tight labor market has made it more difficult to find and recruit qualified candidates to fill enforcement positions. The remaining vacant positions have been posted on the state's hiring website or will be soon, and the division's recruitment efforts will continue. Moving on to item C, enforcement program update, complaint handling statistics. Before we move on, Steve Grove, was there anything that you wanted to add in on enforcement program update for staff vacancy?
No, you covered it well, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, great. So item C, enforcement program update, complaint handling statistics. The table of staff vacancies on page 7 is followed by a statistical overview of enforcement division activity for fiscal year 2021-2022. The first entry in this section shows that enforcement division opened 19,158 complaint investigations during the fiscal year. This is a 16% increase over the previous fiscal year and illustrates that the COVID lull is ending. Unfortunately, the increase in complaints, coupled with the vacant investigator positions, have contributed to an increase in the backlog of complaints. The division's goal is to hold the number of pending complaints to 3,620 and the number of age cases, that is, those that are over 270 days from date of receipt, to 100. At the end of July, the number of pending investigations was 4,747, and the number of age cases was 261. To address the backlog of complaints increased in age cases, Enforcement Chief Steve Grove and his management team are working diligent to ensure that vacant positions are refilled with qualified candidates as soon as possible. A limited amount of overtime has been authorized for staff to assist with the backlog of incoming complaints. And enforcement supervisors are working very closely with their investigators. monitoring their caseloads and production, while providing assistance through repair case reviews. However, if incoming consumer complaints continue to exceed complaint handling ability, process changes may be necessary. Starting on page 8, these are a few of the division accomplishments for the fiscal year, including over 22 million in restitution returned to financially injured consumers, 506 cases referred for criminal prosecution, 218 accusations filed for license revocation or suspension, 1,551 administrative citations issued, and almost 1.9 million in civil penalties collected. And although this is not in your packet, there was 354 letters of admonishment issued. Moving on to page 9 of the board packet, you will find a summary of activity by the statewide investigation fraud team, or better known as SWIFT. The special investigators assigned to SWIFT handle proactive enforcement for CSLB. They conduct undercover sting operations, perform enforcement sweeps of active construction sites, and respond to reports of illegal construction activity. In fiscal year 2021-2022, SWIFT investigators conducted 17 undercover sting operations, participated in 337 days of enforcement sweeps, and responded to 996 leads. As a result, SWIFT completed 2,972 investigations, which resulted in 390 referrals to local DAs for criminal prosecution, 598 citations issued, 129 letters of admonishment issued, and 319 stop orders. These stop orders required an immediate halt to the use of employee labor by contractors who did not have a valid workers' compensation insurance policy. And 1,386 advisory notices were issued for minor violations. Moving on to page 10, there's a table showing during the first half of calendar year 2021, SWIFT, along with partnering agencies from the Joint Enforcement Strike Force, which include EDD, Cal-OSHA, DLSE, and FTB, recovered or resolved over $10 million in outstanding liabilities owed to CSLB and other state agencies. Finally, you will see on page 10 that SWIFT once again participated in the nationwide enforcement operations coordinated by NASCLA, the National Association of State Contracting Licensing Agencies. This year, California and 11 other participating states conducted widespread enforcement operations from June 6th to June 24th. This campaign is intended to raise awareness and is not a competition. But as usual, CSLB was at the top of the pack with its results. SWIFT investigators conducted 3 undercover stings and made 53 sweeps of construction sites, working in 20 counties throughout California. SWIFT's efforts resulted in 142 legal actions and 40 stop orders. This is an informational only item. Shelley, is there any public comment that would like to comment on this report?
We do have a hand raised from Stephen Melton. Stephen, I'll send a request to unmute your microphone. And you are unmuted. Stephen, go ahead.
Hello? Yes, I live in Fresno, California, and we have a big problem. I'm a floor covering contractor, and we have a big problem here with guys working, doing jobs, and buying floors and selling them with no license. And man, they're taking hundreds of jobs. I've done work for a certain apartments complex all over the state for 30 years, and I'm losing all my apartment buildings because they're coming in and they're buying their materials and stuff really cheap and doing the labor for almost nothing. And it's got to where you only work like 2-3 days a week, if that now. I was just wondering what else we could do about it. That's it.
Thank you for your comment. As stated before, board members and committee members can't answer your questions, but if you leave your contact information in the chat, someone from staff will reach out to you. There is actually a Fresno office that they can put you in contact with. Shelley, is there any other public comment?
Thank you. And Mr. Melton, if you could lower your hand now that you've had a chance to speak. We did have a question. Is there a place on the website or somewhere that one can download a listing of these statistics? I believe they are in the meeting materials, correct?
Yes, the meeting materials do reference, I was going off of the page numbers based off of the board packet or for this enforcement committee packet.
Thank you. And that is the only questions we've received.
Are there any comments from committee members?
Yes, this is Susan Granzella. I have a question, Chair Mark. Given the statistics we have, which were, the statistics from last year, and starting the meeting with our vacancy update, which there was good news in the latest statistics that you were able to verbally convey. This is really for our Mr. Grove as well. Given the vacancies that we do have, how are we positioned to ramp up the SWIFT operations for this coming year? We were impacted in so many ways by COVID and other factors, but mainly by COVID. So what do you see as our game plan to increase, if necessary, the SWIFT operations or general enforcement for the coming year?
I will, thank you, Susan, that's great. I do know that this entire meeting today is going to be tackling our strategic goals moving forward, and some of those items of your questions will be addressed later on, but Mr. Grove, please hop in.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Susan, to answer your question, this is something that I have been talking to my staff about, and we are very anxious to get back to our normal level of sting operations. However, we are currently having some real difficulty finding sting properties. So that's our big hurdle right now. And we have put out some requests in industry bulletins seeking assistance from contractors and the public. But that's our big hurdle as far as increasing sting operations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other committee member comment? I would like to say a couple words. I think overall, with the amount of vacancies that we had, this amount of unlicensed activity that is being caught and found is great numbers that are being presented today in that report. I would just like to say, Steve Grove, you and your team keep up the hard work. So, is there any other comments, Shelley?
None at this time.
All right, thank you. So we're going to move to item D. So update, review, discussion, and possible action on the 2022-2024 strategic plan objectives. So turning to page 13 of your packet, I would like to now present a progress update on Enforcement Division's goals in the 2020-24 Strategic Plan, which is Agenda Item D. I'll be providing the updates on 5 of the division's 6 strategic goals, and we will be asking for possible committee action on 3 of these. We will begin with Strategic Goal 2.1, which reads, leverage current enforcement tools, and some of those tools include letters of admonishment and accusations to increase licensee and business knowledge by requiring contractors subject to CSLB corrective action take specific courses. As discussed in your packet, the issue here is how to steer errant contractors into educational courses that would help them better comply with contractor license law requirements. The letters of admonishment, or better known as LOA, was implemented in 2018, and it effectively allows CSLB to require a contractor to complete specific training as part of a corrective action plan. But the LOA is a lower level of corrective action. Unlike LOA, the accusations are considered formal disciplinary action and typically seek license revocation. Some accusations are settled by staying the license revocation if the licensee complies with the specific conditions, such as posting a disciplinary bond, paying restitution, or paying CSLB cost recovery. Failure to post a disciplinary bond or pay restitution to injured parties can result in licensee revocation. But at present, the only mechanism for compelling a respondent to complete a mandated training course is by filing a second accusation. This is a costly and time-consuming process. Ideally, a respondent who was required to complete training in an accusation would have their license automatically revoked if they failed to comply. To do this would require legislative action. Industry leaders who attended a June 6 meeting and Deputy Attorney General liaisons were receptive to the change. Enforcement Division staff have recommended that we pursue this option. In other progress regarding this strategic goal, CSLB staff has researched available training classes at academic institutions and have identified several that could be appropriately prescribed for specific violations. Staff recommends the following motion. For the Enforcement Committee to request the full board to consider a legislative proposal authorizing CSLB to automatically revoke a license subject to a formal disciplinary order if the receiving respondent does not complete a specific instructional course and or take and pass the business law or trade exam. So, committee members, do you have any comments or suggestions on the staff recommendation for strategic goal, for the strategic goal?
Actually, I have a question. It says that a list of available options will be provided for the enforcement staff. Will we have at some point information about how the corresponding courses to remedy the action that was cited, how that would work, or could we at the meeting when we, if passing, present this to the full board, have that information available at that time?
Mr. Grove, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, I'm going to have to refer that maybe to Registrar Fote or Michael Jamnetsky. I don't have that information.
Hi, this is Dave Fote, and we can definitely provide you some potential courses. We've already researched them, so we'll provide those to the full board at the August 30th meeting.
That would be great. That would be great. that I think would give context around such a motion. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay.
Shelley, is there any other board member comment on this one?
No, I'm not seeing any hand raises from board members.
Okay, Shelley, is there any public comment on this?
We do. We have a comment from Jeanette Gallant. Jeanette, I'm unmuting your microphone, and you will have 3 minutes for your comment.
Oh, hello. Hi, thank you. Yeah, actually, I am a little bit behind it. This is related to the SWIFT activities that were mentioned and the sting opportunities. I'm a consumer and have a problem with a contractor, and I'm in the arbitration. So I'm just listening in to get some, information about enforcement and what you all do. And so, having been in a situation where I had a problem with a contractor that dropped the ball and charged us for more than what they did, I was just wondering with that SWIFT activity, I've never heard of that before, and whether or not there's a portion of the enforcement committee that would allow a consumer, while they're within experiencing the problem, to contact somebody to come and investigate and work the solution before it progresses. And you have a lot of complaints, a backlog, and I experienced that. It took me a long time to get to the point where I got into the arbitration, and I'm not happy with the results of the arbitrator. So anyway, just working on a correction to award activity now, and that's kind of the gist of my question. So I was wondering, in terms of reducing your load, is there a way to help people out sooner rather than wait for the complaint? So I realize you can't respond at this time, but that's, maybe you can be thinking about that.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We appreciate your comment, and you're right, the board members can't respond, but if you put your information in the chat, someone from staff will be able to reach out to you.
And so Steve Melton, you still have your hand raised. I'm going to assume that's left up from last time. If you could lower it. And you can lower it by doing the same thing you did to raise it. And I will check in with you. Steve Melton, did you have a comment on this item?
Well, actually, I've noticed around the Fresno area where we live, there's a lot of floor covering installers that doesn't have license that work under one guy's license. And as a matter of fact, there's one guy has 49 people working under his license, and then he just turn around and takes 11%. The companies make the checks out to him, and then they give them to that guy. Then he turns around and makes checks to the guys that's doing the work, and takes 11% of their money, and 1099s them with a 1099 form at the end of the year. So you got 49, 50 guys working under one guy's license, going around doing a lot of work that, somebody else with a license could be doing. That's it.
Thank you. And if you could lower your hand, please.
All right, any other public comment, Shelley?
That is it for now.
All right, committee members, there is a staff recommendation to our committee. Is there a motion to approve the staff recommendation?
So move.
Motion.
I hear a motion by, I think, Board Member Cobos.
Second by Susan Granzella.
We have a second by Susan Granzella. Mariah, can you please call roll?
Michael Mark,
Yes.
Rodney Cobos,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Alan Guy,
Aye.
Jacob Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you. So we're going to move on to Strategic Goal 2.2. And this is starting on page 14, kind of in the middle of our book there. So this goal states research the scope of unlicensed practice, evaluate allocated enforcement resources, and meet with industry stakeholders to review enforcement strategies. We know from CSLB's proactive stings and sweeps that unlicensed activity is widespread in California, as it is elsewhere. But the full scope of unlicensed or underground activity is difficult to determine. Underground activity is by definition undocumented and unrecorded. Some prior studies have been conducted, including a 2015 study by the Little Hoover Commission, but none of these have focused specifically on the construction industry. A preliminary survey by CSLB staff found that an alarming 78% of online contractors' ads did not include a contractor's license as required by law. It is presumed that many of these operators are unlicensed. Industry leaders at the July 6th meeting were supportive of any and all CSLB efforts to combat the underground economy. Without knowing the full size of the underground economy and construction, it is very difficult for CSLB management to determine whether our limited enforcement resources are being properly allocated. CSLB staff is therefore recommending that an outside contractor be hired to conduct a study with two general objectives. To better assist the size of California's underground economy in the construction industry, and review all CSLB enforcement operations and staffing to ensure public safety is optimized. A more specific scope of work proposed for the consultant study is found on page 15 of your packet. These items would include review prior research efforts and work with CSLB staff, industry representatives, and other sources to evaluate the size of the underground economy. Evaluate CSLB's reactive and proactive enforcement investigation needs. Determine whether existing CSLB enforcement resources are properly allocated. Evaluate current production goals for staff. Examine enforcement division staff classifications to determine if they are appropriate for the work performed. Prepare a written report on all findings and recommended appropriate changes. Staff have explored potential vendors and believe the cost of completing the proposed study would not exceed $75,000. This is staff's recommendation to the enforcement committee. Recommend to the full board that up to $75,000 be authorized to hire a private consultant to assess the CSLB enforcement operations and staffing as specified. Ms. Shelley, is there any public comment?
Not seeing any requests for comment at this time.
Committee members, do you have any public comment on this staff recommendation? Looks like no committee members would like to weigh on this one. Is there a hand up from a Stephen Melton still?
Yeah, I don't believe he's lowered it. It's been up for a while. He was our
Okay.
last commenter.
Okay. So, committee members, is there a motion to approve the recommended staff recommendation?
So moved by Cobos.
Got a motion by Cobos. Do we have a second?
Second by Guy.
Second by Board Member Guy. Mariah, can you please call roll?
Michael Mark,
Yes. Aye.
Rodney Cobos,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Alan Guy,
Aye.
Jacob Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you, Mariah. Moving on to the next strategic goal, item 2.3, and this begins on page 16 of your packet. This strategic goal objective states coordinate educational workshops with agency partners to assist applications and licensees in complying with contractor state license law and other business requirements. This goal was discussed with industry representatives at the July 6th meeting with CSLB. Those present at this meeting were supportive of the goal. Since then, Registrar Folk had reached out to the Joint Enforcement Strike Force and regarding their participation and or assistance with future licensing workshops. The Joint Enforcement Strike Force is a partnership of California enforcement agencies, including CSLB, that work with others to combat the underground economy in California. The group is chaired by the EDD Department, Employment Development Department. EDD leadership has confirmed that they will include CSLB in their construction-related educational seminars and workshops. Additionally, CSLB staff will participate in construction-related seminars to discuss contractors' license requirements and related subjects. CSLB's Public Affairs Office will be taking the lead in publicizing and coordinating CSLB enforcement staff participation at the EDD seminars. Public Affairs and enforcement staff will also be developing regularly scheduled webinars to assist licensees. Agency partners will be invited to participate in planning and presenting these webinars. Shelley, this is an informational item only, but is there any public comment?
We do have a comment. One moment. No comments at this time.
Is there any committee members that would like to speak on this? I'll say a couple words if there's no hands up. Yes, I attended that representative meeting on the July 6th with board chair Mary Tykert. The staff report is correct. There was a lot of industry experts who are in this field trying to tackle that underground economy. I think any types of educational pieces that we can provide and coordinate with other efforts, this will be a good thing. So this is only an informational item only, and just make sure before we move on, any other comments that I see no hands raised. And a vote is not requested or needed for this. So we're going to move on. So we're moving on to items 2.5 and then starting on page 17. Research the need to establish a public works enforcement unit to perform outreach to awarding agencies and coordinate public works investigations with compliance groups and government entities to enforce contractor state license law requirements. Enforcement has made good progress on this objective. The goal was discussed with industry representatives at the July 6th meeting with CSLB. Additionally, CSLB staff recently met with compliance groups, including the Foundation for Fair Contracting, operating engineers, and others after research and further discussion. The consensus is that the creation of a dedicated public works unit is not necessary. Instead, the existing quality assurance unit, QA, that work within the enforcement division can be augmented to give appropriate attention to public work investigators. This is achievable with 4 special investigator positions in the quality assurance unit, which duties will include public works complaint investigations, dig alert complaint investigations related to the failure to call for utility markings prior to excavation. This position was previously established through the budget change progress. Electrician certification violations. This position was already specially funded by C10 license renewal subcharge and media sensitive complaints and other special assignments. So this is the recommendation from staff to the enforcement committee. The committee may want to consider this an information-only item, but as an option, the committee may want to make a motion to refer the matter to the full board with a recommendation to amend the strategic goal. A potential amendment would change the goal from research the need of a public works unit to dedicate 4 special investigators to work specific on public works complaints within the existing quality assurance unit. So, committee members, do you have any comments or suggestions or questions on this item?
This is Susan, Board Member Granzella. I have a question on how we went from research to dedicating 4 special investigators. That seems very narrow as an objective. So I was wondering how we got to there and whether it doesn't seem to me necessary to bring that forward unless there was a specific reason to allocate 4. Could we get some information on that?
Sure, Mark. It's Dave Fote. If I could comment on that.
Great.
What we did is we performed outreach to different compliance groups, and we also looked at the complaints that we'd received that related to public works. And so when we looked at the staff that we had that were already handling specified investigations, such as dig alert and electrician certification, the thought was to take those that were already performing that work, put them under one supervisor, and cross-train. So instead of, the board objective was to research the need for a public works unit. And it's our belief that we do need dedicated investigators to work public works complaints because they're very specialized. And we did not want to in any way take staff away from consumer filed complaints. So we're able to identify 3 existing positions that were doing specialized functions. And the proposal is to put those in the quality assurance unit under a dedicated supervisor and cross-train the staff to perform different types of public works investigations, including the electrician certification, the dig alert. We also identified a vacant position from the testing center, one of the testing centers. As you know, the board had an objective to transition to PSI for exam administration, and that freed up a position that could be, that we're proposing to move to the enforcement division and put in the quality assurance unit. So really the staff proposal is that we do think we need dedicated staff for public works investigations. We can optimize the quality assurance unit by having the existing, the supervisor of that unit oversee these type of investigations. We just want to make sure that the enforcement committee is comfortable with this approach.
Thank you.
I do think we want to consider though a motion to the full board because as Member Granzella pointed out, this is changing the original objective from researching the need for it to coming to the recommendation that we absolutely need to have specified staff within an existing unit to perform these functions.
All right, well, we'll take your recommendation. Thank you.
And thank you, Susan, for those comments. It's make sure I'm correct. It's my understanding that these are all job duties that are already being done with CSLB, and the cross training will allow to be better help the consumers, including these agencies that are out there that is trying to tackle this underground economy as a whole, right? Dave, is that pretty much the gist of it?
That's absolutely correct. A lot of these referrals come from compliance investigators that have already done the groundwork. They've already performed their investigation. We're able to review the work that they've done and determine if their investigation warrants a disciplinary action against a licensee. Also, it has the need to perform outreach to awarding agencies so they can better educate the contractors and also their compliance staff. As we heard earlier from Davi Rodriguez, there's a need to do that. And that's the benefit of having staff that are focused on this. And it doesn't take away from the consumer complaints. We're very careful with not letting that happen.
And I think that was and I appreciate the staff's hard work on this strategic objective. It sounds like research was done and research concluded that a whole unit might not be necessary, but there is like an amendment to that strategic goal that staff is looking for, where we can take it to the full board and sort of cross train some of these existing positions to better serve California residents. So what is the wishes of the committee?
Yeah, hi, board member Guy here. Yeah, I agree that the public work stuff is very specialized, so I think there should be specialized positions and training for this. It's very different than the consumer complaints, which seems to be the majority of the unlicensed activity I would think would exist in the consumer world. So I think it's a good idea. I just want to make sure it doesn't pull any positions away from the understaffed enforcement unit, focusing on the consumer complaints.
Board member Granzella, did you have a comment as well?
No, I agree with board member Guy. And I'm also having issues with my computer where there's a delay. So sorry about that. But anyway, I agree.
Member Cobos also has a comment.
Good morning, thank you. So with having the dedicated four, are we limiting ourselves to, if more are needed, what would have to take place? Does it have to come back before the committee, or what happens if we do need more staff on that?
Well, we are always evaluating our workload, and this would be something that the consultant would also take into consideration. So this, in a way, will come back to you as to the need for additional staff. I can ask maybe Steve Grove to comment a little bit on this, but what Steve did is look very carefully at the workload that we're currently receiving, such as for the dig alert complaints. What are we getting from the awarding agencies? And you're correct. We could receive far more awarding agency complaints than we may be able to handle with the existing staff. So one of the ways we do manage that, though, is by being very clear with the compliance groups what our priorities are. An example being, we want to make sure the contractors are licensed. We don't want to see where we have significant civil wage and penalty assessment violations occurring, but there are ways that we can manage that workload. And fortunately, we have a very strong working relationship with the compliance groups who support what we're doing. But the short answer is, if there's a need for additional staff, we would bring that back. We would consider a budget change proposal to increase staffing if necessary. We just believe at this time that the 4 that we're proposing would be sufficient and really help us to get this off the ground.
Board Member Cobos, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, David.
Okay, committee members, it sounds like there is kind of the 2 options. We can amend the strategic goal or keep this an informational item only. Staff is looking to take this to the full board, refer the matter, and this is the motion that they were seeking as an option. So we have kind of the 2 options: consider it an information item only, or with the research that was done for the strategic goal, amend this strategic goal. So a potential amendment would change the goal from a research the need of the public works unit to dedicate 4 special investigators to work specific public works complaints with the existing quality assurance unit. So if that's the case, then we would need a motion for a proposal recommendation to amend this enforcement strategic goal 2.5.
Mr. Chair, I move to amend the motion.
To clarify, that was Board Member Cobos, and your motion is to approve a recommendation to the full board to amend the enforcement strategic goal 2.5.
Exactly, as you stated.
Is there a second?
I will second the motion. This is Susan Granzella.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any other committee member comments? Seeing none, can we get a roll call?
I'm sorry, Member Mark, did we want to do public comment on this one?
Right.
Appreciate that. Shelley, is there any public comment?
There is. We have a comment from Davi Rodriguez. Davi, your line is unmuted. You may proceed. You'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, do I have am I unmuted now?
You are.
Okay, yeah, on this, as it mentioned earlier, I did make a bunch of complaints about, one municipality, and I've noticed that there is many municipalities doing the same thing. And what was amazing is that the city councils and their city attorneys said they don't believe in it. They don't believe in contractors' state license law for certain things. They just, or they don't want to. And thing is, when the board outreaches to these municipalities and advises them, then maybe the municipalities don't award contracts to 10 or 20 unlicensed contractors. So the board's effort is, exponential in that regard. So it's a worthy enterprise. And I also would have to say that after I made such a stink about that, at least one municipality got very creative in their effort. And
Mr. Rodriguez, this is Enforcement Chair Mark. Is this public comment in relation to this motion in second? And
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Is this public comment in relation to the motion in the second on the floor on enforcement strategic goal 2.5?
I didn't.
It sounded like it was. It sounded like it sounds like your public comment is referencing what you stated earlier during general public comment. Right now, we're seeking public comment on enforcement strategic goal 2.5. That was. There's a motion and a second on the floor. So.
Oh, I see. It seems to have altered a bit. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Shelley, is there any other public comment on Enforcement Strategic Goal 2.5 amendment?
We have a comment from James Alvarez. James, I've unmuted your line. You have 3 minutes for your comment.
Am I on?
You are.
Oh, okay, sorry. I had a question. Does the board plan on expanding its exemptions from licensure to closer to the national average or to the reciprocity states? Because I know Nevada and most of the other states have a higher exemption. And I had one more final question. Does the board plan on allowing open book testing or online testing similar to the reciprocity states that allow that to promote more licensed professionals? Those were my only 2 questions. It's a little off subject. Sorry about that.
Thank you. And with that, there's no further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. If you provide your information in the chat, someone from staff can get back to you. And usually those type of questions are usually at the beginning of the meeting for public comment, as well as if there's any additional items on the agenda. So I think since there's no other public comment, can we get a roll call, please?
Michael Mark,
Yes.
Rodney Cobos,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Yeah, I can send him all the information.
Alan Guy,
because It looks like there's a financial injury to
Jacob Lopez,
cost recovery.
Aye.
Looks like it passes. To bring it to the full board. Thank you. Okay, moving onward. So the final strategic goal that we will be addressing at this enforcement committee meeting is strategic plan item 2.6, and that update begins on page 18 of your packet. The goal states this: continue to enforce workers' compensation insurance requirements to protect consumers and workers and scrutinize licensees who self-certify they have no employees. So on page 18. So this goal was discussed with industry representatives at the July 6th meeting. Those present strongly supported the strict enforcement of workers' compensation insurance requirements and appreciate the continuing efforts by CSLB. On July 20th, 2022, Enforcement Division held a statewide supervisors meeting. The issue of workers' compensation insurance was discussed, and the importance of enforcing insurance requirements was emphasized. The supervisors were also reminded that the maximum civil penalty for filing a false exemption from workers' compensation insurance was recently increased from $5,000 to $30,000, thanks to CSLB sponsored Assembly Bill 569. That concludes the update of Enforcement Division strategic goals. And with that, we have completed all the agenda items scheduled for today. Committee members, do you have any final comments or suggestions? Seeing no hands raised. Shelley, is there any additional public comment?
There are none.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn this enforcement committee?
So moved by Cobos.
Motion by Cobos.
Second by Guy.
Second by Guy. Thank you. We are now adjourned. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Chair Mark.